Hey everybody, welcome to the final, well, maybe, part of Selene. We're getting the final ending. So those that say the story's still really confusing, I think it's on purpose. It's just madness. An actual decent one, and it certainly wasn't funny in any way. And yet, the girl sitting at the windowsill was silently laughing, covering white teeth with her hand. The girl from the supermarket. The girl from the dream. She was still wearing a light white dress, even though in the morning the temperature dropped to 50 degrees Fahrenheit and it was going to rain. One of the straps fell down to the side, but the girl was in no hurry to pull it back. She swung her crossed legs a little, looking at Ethan from under her brow, with a smile of a child who had a hilariously mischief in mind. Did I say something funny? The girl quickly raised her eye and shrugged slightly, still holding the smile back. Just as before, she did not make a sound. Ethan even assumed she could be mute, but decided to make one last attempt. Just one question, and then he calls the cops. Don't remember what we asked last time. The girl's eyes became round and her face turned into a surprised grimace. Overly surprised. Ethan immediately remembered the time when he and Hope came across a couple of street mimes. She poked her thin finger into her chest, which made her tense nipples show up for a second under the thin fabric of her dress.
Me? I am what you were looking for.
She spoke slowly, stretching out her vowels with some kind of delight. A moment later, the girl reached for something behind her back, quickly pulled it to her lips, and took a sip. Ethan's throat became tight with blood that abruptly rushed to his head. "Where did you get this?" The girl traced Ethan's gesture with a genuine surprised look, and the next moment she parted her fingers. Hope's huge, colorful cup, the one just got at the store, tinkled hurtfully as it struck the floor and then shattered into pieces. Just like that, there was a brief moment when the cup was laying peacefully on the floor. Ethan got enough time to hope it would endure the fall. And then the fragments burst everywhere at once, as the furious white light broke out from inside. But no, that was milk. Just some milk.
You shouldn't have spooked me, you know. Now look at what you've done. The poor cup is so broken. So many eeny-meeny tiny pieces. There's no way to mend it at all.
Ethan was suffocating. "What the hell are you doing here? What do you want from me?" The girl bit her lip and twisted a fallen shoulder strap between fingers. The top of the dress slid even lower.
Do you want me to leave?
Yes, get the fuck out.
But I may run into Hope. Right at the door, Ethan. She forgot her pass and will be here any minute. What will the poor girl think?
The girl looked over her shoulder and her face instantly lit up.
It's her! Here she is! Hope is simply amazing, accurate to a minute. Hello!
The girl turned over on her stomach, leaned on the sill, and waved vigorously to someone invisible. Her dress completely slid down. That bitch! Ethan would bet her tits are flashing right through the window. I forgot which one. Ethan could not see it, but he knew. He felt that Hope was really standing down there, and she was looking at the window, of course, although she couldn't see much anymore, as a blurry veil covered her eyes. The girl slowly turned around and stared at him with her eyes wide open without blinking. Her shoulders shook as if she was going to cry, but she was laughing. At first, it was a couple of stifled laughs. Then it became a laughter of someone who just heard a great joke and gradually turned into a wild barking screams. He has to stop it. Right now! Ethan wanted to rush to the window, but took just one step and froze in place. The girl must be out of her mind. She's stoned or worse. She might have a syringe and he doesn't want to have any more problems. He only wants this thing removed from his windowsill, welded in a steel box and dumped somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. He still had his phone in his hand. 911, what's the address of your emergency? The bitch shrank, hunched but kept cackling like a pack of coyotes yelping on a moonlit night. She was withering with laughter, and the pale rags of dry, flabby skin were shaking in rhythm of her movements, her dress looking like a death shroud. He suddenly thought she was much older than he thought at first. What is going on? Ethan looked at her for the last time, a mixture of hatred and disgust in his eyes, and turned away, running his fingers through his hair. There's a stranger in my apartment. A woman, most likely on drugs or just insane. Can you see her right now? Ethan could see only the walls in front of him, but he heard the deafening howl. It was echoing throughout his skull, beating into his temporal bones like a desperate bird. Ethan clenched his teeth. Yes. Does she have a weapon? Maybe. She threatened me. Can you leave the apartment? No. This scum can escape, and I don't want her to get... Ethan hesitated. I can't hear you, sir. What is happening? Speak up. I can't hear you. What is happening? The terrifying laughter kept echoing in Ethan's ears. There was no one behind him. He approached the window slowly, as if it was happening in a dream. The shards of Hope's cup crunched under his feet. Just like before, the window was closed. Ethan opened it and carefully looked down. He did not see the body, too good to be true, but he had to check. Only the gray pavement, which gradually turned black as it started to actually rain. Ethan looked across the street just in time to notice a familiar cream-colored coat disappearing behind the corner of a nearby house. Hope! Hope! He screamed so loud that something snapped in his throat, but she didn't hear him. Or maybe she didn't want to hear him. Ethan called her at least 100 times. Hope didn't answer. Ethan thought he could come to her office, but eventually decided it would only make things worse. The police were in his apartment 23 minutes, 40 seconds later. They didn't find any sign of forced entry, and the call record, as Ethan found out later, had nothing that resembled laughter or howling. No extraneous sounds, as the officer said. Hope returned sometime between the late night and early in the morning. By the way, if my voice cracks, forgive me. I'm getting over being sick, so that's going to happen. The skin on her cheekbones were taut and almost transparent, and there were deep shadows under her eyes as if she hadn't slept in a long time. She smelled of strong alcohol. Ethan went out of the dark room to her. He didn't sleep and didn't turn on the light either. Things that lurked in the dark, real or imagined, no longer frightened him. He even wished that something he had been dreading for the past month, he finally could name that feeling he had, would come out of the greasy blackness of the shadows and snap his neck. Everything in the apartment was mockingly calm, except for Ethan himself. Hope? Hope stared at him in silence, swaying a little. Instead of pupils, she had dark holes. I've been thinking a lot about what I would say to you if you came back. What can I say? Hope's face showed no emotion. It seemed like she didn't even blink. Anyway, I realized that I can only tell the truth, no matter how crazy it sounds. If I try to cheat, it only gets worse, right? Ethan gave a short, nervous laugh. Anyway, Ethan had plenty of time to think about what he was going to say, but he still didn't know where to start. Some time ago, I don't remember exactly, I started seeing a girl.
Who is she, Ethan?
I don't know.
Is it Sophie?
Who?
Sophie Wolf, your student from that online course?
Hope made a vague gesture with her hand. Movies from the late Victorian era. Ethan didn't know why he said that, but Hope obediently repeated it in a flat voice.
I remember you were impressed with her. You always liked smart girls, and this one was also beautiful.
Hope, this isn't what you think.
Think. Who says I think? Thinking's too painful.
Wait, hold on. Ethan disappeared into the room and came back a few minutes later. The darkness of the hallway was diluted by the light of the screen. Hope covered her eyes with her hand, either from the brightness of the screen itself, or because she didn't want to see whatever there was.
What is it all about?
Here, look. It's Sophie Wolf. On the screen, in fact, was the profile of Sophie Wolf, his student. On the photo, Sophie was squinting either from the bright sun or because her curly red hair was getting in her eyes. A small brown-haired girl snuggled up to her with a shy smile. They're a nice couple. If I remember right, they had a wedding this year.
Then, who is...
I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. I just want her out of my life, but this bitch follows me. Well, she used to follow. But now I don't think I'll ever see her again.
Is it good or bad?
Hope, please. If you want to leave, I'll understand. But if you're willing to give me a second chance, I'll promise I'll do my best to mend it all. He couldn't really promise, but he was too eager for the nightmare, real or imagined, to finally end. No more weird stories. Please, Hope. I don't need anyone but you. If you can get... He couldn't finish because Hope kissed him. Her bag hit the floor with a thud. The rest of the night actually went fine. Well, even more than that, except for the fact they were too busy to get any sleep. At least everything was going okay until the moment when instead of Hope's face, just for a moment, Ethan saw. He couldn't tell her. He mumbled something about not feeling well and collapsed on his back, panting. He closed his eyes so that Hope wouldn't accidentally catch a glimpse of what he saw. Nothing happened. It wasn't real. It's fine, she understands, said Hope. Oh, something has changed. The jelly turned really bad. What? So we still have a couple to unlock? Okay, that's it. I still don't know how to unlock those. I will figure it out eventually. The concave muzzle of Persian cat stared back at him, All that was required of Ethan, he had to call the cattery. A simple task, but Ethan hesitated. It was hard for him to get used to the idea of one of those pop-eyed creatures walking around their apartment. During the day, it will nap where it pleases, and at night sneak into the kitchen and play with the shadows that move by themselves. And its eyes will turn into two saucers of black and gray green nacre if the light reaches them. Ancient people believed cats could walk between worlds and see spirits. Looking at Persians, Ethan hardly believed they could even breathe on their own. Get yourself a Maine Coon, you gotta get yourself a monster cat. And yet, in this, Ethan Harrison from 21st Century agreed with the ancient people. There was something sinister about them. In any case, he should call the cattery, for Hope's sake, for the sake of them both, since he made the decision. Ethan had already picked up the phone and was about to proceed with the plan when he heard the key turn at the entrance door. Something about that wound him up. It was barely 5 o'clock in the evening, which was in any way very early for Hope to be back. If everything was fine, that is. Ethan closed his laptop and went out into the hallway. For a long time, he couldn't say a single word, and when he could speak again, he only managed one question. "What have you done?" Hope's smile faded, and for the first time in 4.5 or even 5 years, they had been a couple. Ethan was glad of it. In fact, there was nothing surprising about it. As with the new haircut and the new hair color, Hope looked unbearably, insanely similar to that creature at the window. Hope's lips turned white, trembling.
This didn't help, did it? Any of it? You can't love me even now, right?
What are you talking about?
Isn't it obvious? I see how you look at me. You're disgusted. You try your best to touch me as little as possible.
No, he's just really mad you guys didn't pick up those zucchini.
And no matter what I do, no matter what I try, it doesn't help.
Admit it. You never loved her. You didn't, right, Ethan? She was convenient, and that's about it. Shit makes the flowers grow.
I think I did that line, but I'll be honest, I don't
The
remember.
flowers grew so much, didn't they,
Ethan would never hit his wife. More than that, he would never hit a woman. But what spoke to him was neither his wife nor a woman. It was a nightmare incarnate that bared its long, sharp teeth and came to take away his rights for a second chance. Or so Ethan thought at the time. The punch turned out somewhat pathetic. But you have to take into account that wife-beating is not a fairground attraction. When you hit your wife properly, the mark does not fly up to the highlighted sign and say, "A good one!" Although this was only indirectly related to the early Renaissance, Ethan had expertise in the matter, since his old man fist used to itch often. If there was something like that, he would know. However, any sign could light up the moment it would say something like, "You're scum, Ethan." No! He kept repeating that even after Hope stormed out of the door in tears. Ethan barely remembered the following few days. Something seemed to be happening. Some people called him. He called himself a lot. He called Hope. Hope wasn't answering the phone. He knew this would happen. Every time he dialed her number, he knew he'll end up listening to the voicemail signal. It's become something of a ritual. He would wake up. Sometimes it was light outside, sometimes dark, but more often it was something gray he neither could nor would want to identify because of the drawn curtains. He called Hope. Hope wouldn't answer the phone. He would go to the kitchen and turn on the water. He would watch the silvery twisted stream break against the sink for a while. Eventually, he'd put a cup under the stream and fill it to the brim. Drink. Go to the bathroom. Back to the couch. It's too bad to be true. All of this can't be real. Life can't crumble into pieces in an instant, just collapse inwards like a wooden block tower. Ethan couldn't remember the name of that game. Once he and Hope went to see... He and Hope? It's too bad. All of this can't be real. He didn't do anything. Couldn't be that he didn't do anything. No. He hit Hope. He hit her, and the red blot spread across her cheek. It was too dark to see, but Ethan knew how it goes. How could he do that? What happens now? What can happen now? These thoughts were like a bunch of needles he tried to swallow over and over. Sometimes he managed to briefly forget about them. It would happen when he woke up in the gray timelessness, looked at the dirty white ceiling, and then didn't remember who that Ethan Harris was. But the pain would always come back. He had a bunch of needles in his throat, and no matter how much water he drank, he couldn't get rid of it. Hope's father shook him up a bit. Not in the sense he could have done it, grabbing a hold of him, lifting him off the ground. Hope's father was a tough man, and despite his age, he could hit Ethan hard. Ethan was afraid of it, and at the same time, he wanted it to happen. That would have made everything easier. Maybe even fixed it all. Ethan was going over it in his head as he stared at the phone screen displaying a familiar number. He was awfully scared, yet he answered. It turned out Hope had asked her father to pack up for her. Mr. Merlee's voice was flat, maybe even a bit uncertain. And worst of all, he wasn't angry. This plunged Ethan into despair. He couldn't get his redemption like this. However, the upcoming visit forced Ethan to gain his senses. It shoved him back into reality, like a stream of people pushing one into the crowded subway train. He tidied up the place a bit. He shaved. He figured out what to say. Several times he rehearsed his speech in front of the mirror. And just before Mr. Merlee's arrived, Ethan left the keys with the neighbors. Simply put, he fled. Of course, he warned Mr. Merlee's beforehand with a message, because he didn't have the heart to call. Ethan wanted Mr. Merlee's to pick up what he had to and get out as soon as possible. Mr. Merlee's wasn't going to help. That's for sure. He wasn't going to help, which meant he simply got between Ethan and his wife. Ethan was angry with Mr. Merlee's like he was the source of all the trouble. Anger was boiling up inside him, mixing with cheap coffee and turning into caustic acid. There was nothing rational about this feeling. Ethan had plenty of time to think about it, to weigh it, to examine it under the magnifying glass. He was sitting in a small cafe on the corner of the street until the streets got dark. He would have stayed there even longer if a waiter hadn't come to his table to tell the place was closing. Ethan nodded absently, asked for a moment to use the bathroom. Again, there was nothing rational about being angry with Mr. Merlee's. But to be honest, it was pathetic. Just like hitting your wife and then running away not to face her father. You're scum, Ethan. Worthless scum. Ethan turned off the tap and stared at his reflection in a large mirror. A few drops of water trembled on the tip of his nose and chin. Now that was a proper punch. Sir, I'm sorry, but Sir? Are you okay? You have... The blood oozed from his split lip. Ethan wiped it with the back of his hand. Yes, I'm fine. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep you. He smiled. The fresh wound got swollen with blood again. The red blot spread across his face, just as as it should. Ethan didn't lie to the waiter. He really was fine. Maybe not the same manners as before, but the gears in his head were starting to move again. When he got home, Mr. Merlees had already left. Turned out that he didn't even take the keys from the neighbors. At first, Ethan assumed Mr. Merlees could cancel the visit, but as soon as he opened the door, his doubt disappeared. A strong, unfamiliar scent was filling the hallway. It could be Mr. Merlees' cologne, or maybe the smell of the apartment itself, with Hope's presence faded away. Mr. Merlees must have taken his daughter's keys. Somehow, the possibility never crossed Ethan's mind before. He drew the air in through his nostrils and then slowly felt, as sharp and clear as in that dream he had a few days ago. Something was going to happen. Ethan looked around the empty, dark room and reached for the phone. Was it to perform a ritual, or was he hoping something would go different this time? Short beeps. Ethan thought it was safe to say something was already happening. He only had to figure out what and where. Something had changed in the picture. It's not that Hope's favorite blouse is missing from the closet. If you find the difference, you win. If you find the difference, you'll know where the gears are taking you. The hallway. Pot-bellied bowls on the dresser, full of gibberish and dust. The kitchen. An uneven row of glass jars on the shelf, an empty coffee maker bearing dry blackness at the bottom, spoons, forks, and knives, some of them really sharp. The bathroom, a mirror on the wall, and in the reflection, the closed door is open. No, not here. What about? Ethan licked his split lip. Yeah, that's it. He has to check his email now. Ethan was looking carefully. Seemed like a lot of time had passed. His mailbox was full of various emails, but Ethan barely glanced at the names. He was looking for something special. And what was special about, say, letters from the agency that were gradually becoming more and more concerned? At some point, concern turned into cold and aggressive. Ethan idly skimmed through the notice of contract termination. Not what he was looking for. He started with the oldest emails, scanned the list all the way to the top. Nothing. Maybe he's looking in the wrong place. Maybe there's just nothing to look for. Nah, something is happening. He only has to figure out what and where. Ethan goes so close to the accurate answer to those questions that the light of new knowledge could have burned out his eyes. At the top of the list was an untitled letter. Maybe Ethan missed it the first time, or maybe it just wasn't there before. The sender was the same writer Ethan had volunteered to help completely free of charge. Ethan lunged. Lungs turned into a deflated pool ball. He clicked on the name of the letter without a name. Of course, the letter actually had a name. Mail clients carefully add untitled to the empty line, just in case you're losing it when you type your email, because something goes out of that open door in the bathroom mirror. The poor guy begged Ethan to come. The mail said he couldn't sleep. He was scared, exhausted, and didn't know who else to ask. Something will get him very soon if he won't figure out anything. He didn't know if it was related to the work he was doing. He didn't know how to drive away what had settled in his house. He only knew that something enormously hungry was looking at him from the darkness. You know what I mean, right? Ethan knew. By the time he finished reading the letter, Ethan already knew what he should do. Let's see. I don't remember which one gets us this ending. Let me go check. Let's see. Let's answer the call. He must. Something that settled in his house. His skin got covered in cold goosebumps. He carefully he could feel the eyes again, focused on a single point on the back of his head. Something was watching him. He tried to forget, to repress, to convince himself that nothing was happening. But something was looking at him, and it wasn't a matter of belief. The silence in his ears was a thin, tinkling note. It's watching. It's watching. Ethan jumped on his feet, frantically looking around. A short, desperate cry escaped from his chest, and his eyes, with a bulging mesh of burst capillaries, opened wide. There was nothing behind him, nothing but the black void of the room, but he couldn't trust it. Ethan knew he wasn't alone. God almighty, he wasn't alone! Ethan wiped his mouth. A long red smear appeared on his sleeve and ruffled his hair. The skin on the back of his neck was scalding cold. Ethan was afraid, but what was he afraid of? He tried to think coherently, to crumble his formless, unfathomable terror into a single image, but couldn't. He was afraid of the shadows, of the unfamiliar smell of the apartment, of those thoughts that fluttered in his head like trapped moths. He was afraid of what he might say out loud if he tried to speak to the dark emptiness of the room. Ethan suddenly saw the white dress hem swaying in the still wax-like air, the rippling flesh of the membrane, the curtains at the open window, the death shroud. He remembered the terrible ghost and what he had to do. Ethan was suffocating. He sank to the floor. He was afraid of the white-dressed wraith. Yes. But the fear was deeper, bigger, and the source of it was elsewhere. This was not the cause, but one of the effects. The dark womb swayed before his eyes. It was intelligent, alive. Ethan could smell its foul breath. He had to go. He had to find the house from the letter. Maybe then he'll find the answers too. Maybe the two of them will figure out a way to escape. When Ethan crossed the threshold of his apartment, the hardest thing was not to run. He found the right street with no trouble at all. The road in this part of the suburb formed a simple, clear scheme, so he didn't need any help. Still, Ethan desperately wanted to pull up in front of the little house with the light still on. Run up on the porch, knock on the door, and just ask. Just ask. Ask anything. Ethan swallowed the dry throat and kept driving. House number 8 was hidden behind the trees, cut off from its neighbors by the wide lawn. Hell, you can't even call this a lawn anymore. The grass crept into the cracks in the hallway, in the driveway, and had taken root there in thick tufts. Among the weeds on the lawn, wild mint stirred its leaves drowsily. Just as if an enormous hand tore out a patch from one of the fields, Ethan was driving by on his way here and left it in the middle of a sleepy street as a prank. The night outside Ethan's car was fresh and cool. This and the ride itself cleared his head a bit, but now he was sinking back into the sticky uneasiness. As he got out of the car, he slammed the door loudly so that the house would know he wasn't scared. But of course he was. He was scared as hell, and still didn't know what he was afraid of. Ethan went to the porch and stood at the steps for a moment, looking at the front door. Then he walked to the house. There were no lights on. in any of the windows. Now I'll go back to my car and get out of here. But Ethan didn't do anything like that. Instead, he went up to the porch and, for a moment's thought, put aside the flower pot and the letter that the letter mentioned. He'll just check things up, and that's it. The spare key was in place. He won't go inside. It's just a small check. The key turned in the lock. It all went incredibly slow, as if Ethan was terrified of what he was doing, and he was. Just... A burst of sharp pain burned the back of his head. The door, the key, and the hand that held it faded in a crimson-black nothingness. Ethan was seeing a terrible dream. He was back in the white room with Hope. Hope sat on the faded red couch, her hands clasped in her lap. Her eyes were staring into nothingness. Ethan thought Hope wasn't seeing him again, but she was. Hope looked up at him with her blue eyes, and in reeling horror, Ethan realized how much pain there was in them.
She had the key, Ethan. All this time, she had the key. She has all the keys.
Who? Ethan wanted to ask, but didn't have time. Because Hope wasn't there anymore. Only her head kept laying on the sofa, severed, oozing blood from the stump of the neck. Suddenly the head moved. Ethan tried to scream, but he couldn't, as he had no mouth. Nice reference. Mwah. All he could do was watch Hope's terrible severed head slowly turning towards him, looking for him with dry, glassy eyes, watching the black snakes move in her hair, and the mess of yellow-red entrails spilling out of the ripe, gutted sofa. Ethan tried to scream again. The abhorrent vision faded. But the eyes remained, Hope's empty, lifeless eyes. Through the tight, throbbing pain, Ethan didn't realize right away that he was actually seeing them. Hope sat opposite to him, pale in the moonlight. Both of them were in the same room. Ethan reached for her with all his being, but he couldn't move. He was all, well, tied. Hope's hair was light and long again. Is that a wig? The thought was out of place, almost ridiculous.
Ethan, why did you do this? Why did you do all of this?
He might have believed that she really needed an answer, if not for a tightly round gag in his mouth.
Now I have to kill you.
Now you see why I took the role.
I have to. Do you understand?
She sobbed.
But first I have to confess something. I read your email. After what happened at the window, I just couldn't help it. I found this address in one of the emails. Her address.
Hope, please. It's not what you think. But all that came out of Ethan's throat was a grunt.
Shh! Don't strain yourself. You have a wound on your head, and if you strain yourself, you may lose consciousness. I haven't told you everything yet. It's important for me to share. Laura says it helps. I don't know. Does it help even?
Another sob.
I parked nearby and waited for so long. I knew you were coming, sooner or later. I saw her come and go, and you weren't there. I was beginning to doubt it, but you did come. You are here.
Hope smiled, yet her eyes remained blank.
I'm so tired. You may hate me for it, but I had to confess. It's not an easy task for me. You know, I hate lying. Oh, I'm sick of myself, Ethan. Why does it have to end like this?
Ethan didn't have an answer.
My problem is that I can't lose. I never learned to. I tried, Ethan. Tried so hard. But this is stronger than me. You know, when I was a little girl, my dad took me to the pool. I couldn't swim, and he wanted us to go kayaking together. I had those cute inflatable armbands, with tiny bear cubs on them. Can you imagine?
Again, the terrible glassy smile.
And so the lesson ended, and I still had no idea what I was supposed to do. But I couldn't let my daddy down, so I kept floundering in the pool until my lips turned blue. The coach had to literally pull me out of the water. Oh, but I think I haven't changed since then. Not a bit. I have to be number one, always. The best. One and only. I can't have it any other way. Do you follow me, Ethan?
There wasn't even a hint of hatred in the way she looked, the way she spoke. And that's what filled Ethan with mesmerizing, crippling dread. Hope loomed over him, the pipe in her hand so close that Ethan could see the rusty scabs clearly.
I'm scared, Ethan. I'm terribly, awfully scared.
She ran her hand gently over his cheek.
I love you.
You don't have to do this, Hope, Ethan would have said if only he could. But she had to. Hope shrieked as she had to squish an ugly bug and brought the pipe down on his skull with a crunch. Then once more, and more. She repeated this simple action until her husband's head turned into a nauseating yellow-red mess. Her father, who was a doctor, would probably have called it inhomogeneous, because certainly were quite large fragments of bone left in it. No matter how hard Hope tried to put a quick end of it, she was just an ordinary girl. She did what she could, replacing the lack of ability with effort. When she finished, Hope put the pipe down next to the body. She wanted to wipe off the blood and all the rest, but that wouldn't be wise. The pipe was the murder weapon after all. Then Hope turned on her phone and called all the necessary calls. She confessed to what she had done in all the detail, yet she left some things out. In the era of sex scandals, she wanted her husband to be remembered as Ethan Harrison, who truly loved history, and not Ethan Harrison, who cheated on his poor wife. After all, she really did love him. Covering what was left of her husband with her cream-colored coat, Hope felt exhausted, and then she had to take care of herself. To her shame, the part of the plan Hope didn't think through. Suddenly, she remembered there was a window on the second floor. The thought was simple, clear, almost joyous, and did not quite belong to her. Something in the house seemed to take pity on her and give her a clue. The window was open, and there were lots of trusty cables in the room. Upstairs, which was convenient, as her body became terribly heavy, as if made of stone, and every little thing took great effort. In the very last moments before both her feet were in the air, Hope thought she might survive or suffer for a long time before it was all over. But it was over soon enough. Ending 5 of 6. We've done it, everybody. The final ending. The one I was saving for last. It's a great game. But there's something that changed. Happy dreamland. Fill me and thou shalt be full, the fruit of sour and bitter to the taste. This is the food, this is the drink. Hey, you're not supposed to be here. Says who? And show. You don't have to do this. Indistinct. Winter Wonderland. How to build a snowman. It begins with a core, an application point. You will need materials too. Harvesting it might prove difficult. If you manage, however, the fruit of your labor may be plentiful. Behold the absolute, ceaseless manifestation. What? And that is almost all of them. I think I get the other one from the endings. Yeah, I would get it from the endings, okay. I'm going to quickly go see if this is different, just so we can get the other one. Let's see if this is any different. Sweat broke out on his upper lip. Ethan closed his eyes. No. Ethan said it with a firm clarity. All the following words that came out of his mouth were more and more quiet until his lips moved silently. No, I'm sorry. I can't help. I'm so sorry. He really was sorry. Sorry about his former life. Sorry for himself, desperate to the point his stomach clenched with painful spasms. Sorry for Hope. Sorry for the poor writer who kept being dragged deeper into a cold vortex of darkness. But what could he do? What could Ethan do against the darkness? He failed. Maybe he had the skill to get the answers required, but they were buried too deep. At that depth, the water turned pitch black, and there were things in that darkness Ethan didn't know the names of. Didn't want to know. He took a deep breath, as if he was actually about to die. Then he deleted the email. The letter, with the title Untitled, disappeared into the vortex. The frantic, terrified pleas for help were erased, leaving no trace, as if they had never existed. No, it's not like that. Hope once told him it was a bad time for Ethan to recall this. The information on the internet doesn't really disappear after you click delete. Most often it remains somewhere on servers and you just lose access to it. You turn the mirror to the wall and pretend it's like your fancy. There was nothing wrong with the reflection. In that case, the silent screams didn't vanish. It was now trapped. Trapped where no one could hear it. I'm so sorry. Ethan covered his face with his hands. The mirror on the wall of Ethan's dark bathroom was reflecting a closed door. Ethan and Hope got an official divorce 3 months later. Okay, so this we have seen, so I'm going to pause it really quick. If anything new happens, I will unpause it. Fuck it, I'll do it. Ethan thought he would at least find the strength to apologize after all the lies Hope had to listen to, but didn't happen. He likes to think it was his decision, though deep down he knows the truth. Ethan's passion for history suddenly faded away. He could never imagine this would happen, nor could he have imagined he'll return to work in an office. His days were filled with routine, small joys like the fact that it's 6:30 p.m. already, and his workday is over. It's comforting, or at least it dulls the pain. At times, Ethan goes out to the bar with his colleagues to discuss the quarter's workload and celebrate the fact it's Friday at least. Yeah, this is different, okay. It's a good thing I did check. Once again, huge thank you to my lovely, lovely bosses of this game. I will be playing their next game when it comes out, which is, I think, Croc or something, the little alligator girl. I know people have been looking forward to that. I love their games. By the way, they are very good at writing horror. I really hope Haiji and... Oh, I am going to get yelled at. I forgot your name, sweetie. I'm really bad with names. Naiji? Naija? Oh, God, I'm going to get yelled at hard. Both of you keep writing horror. I love you. Ethan's office is located on Square Park, right past a massive bridge. Sometimes on the way home, Ethan stops on the bridge and stares at the dark water below. Oh, is that an ending we... Oh, camera obscura. We didn't get that ending. I thought we had. So I'm hoping that showed that reference was for Fatal Frame, which is a game I'm actually streaming right now. And I am a huge Fatal Frame fangirl. If anybody reads the comic, there is actually a camera obscura hidden in issue 1. Not even kidding, there is a camera obscura. You'll see it more through the comic. Which I believe camera obscura is an actual comic, or is an actual, like, real-life camera. Blue Lights Hotel. The blue lights, as blue as it goes. This happened, yes, around 5 a.m. I was standing right there making a sandwich. A toast, some peanut butter, and the jelly, yes. Then I saw the blue lights. That's how I knew the veneer is very thin. I know how it sounds like, but there's more to, you know. You have to do this properly, else you'll get into trouble. Yeah, some doors are bad. That's how it goes, man. That's how it goes. Once it's on, you can't stop it. That's how it goes. Oh ho, there's a devil in your house again. Can you fix that? Will you find it? Well, here's a little trick. Join the happy getaway. Getaway. Book tickets today so devil never finds you. Ah, the tomato soup is finally reducing. That is everyone but one of them. Miss Stein, essay copy 1. It's a stupid task, and I can't see how it helps. Guess I'll try to just type something. Ass cheeks. Ass cheeks? Ugh, I'm dumb. Monsters are back to eat me. Today, monsters are back to eat me. Their eyes scratch and scratch until they get to the core. I hate their tiny fingers and how they smell of chewing gum and bruises. They'd love to rip my heart away, to see if it has insect legs they could pluck at. Ah, but I hid it well, in the thicket of letters, and I build ladders, to get where they would never find me. In a cell in the back of my head, I'm free. So people have asked what the meaning of this game is, and I think it is, there is a meaning and there isn't. I think part of it is just insanity and the guy slowly going insane, but it's one of those games where you take your own, thought out of the game. I could always go and find out the truth, of course, from my darlings, the developers, but I'm not going to. So once again, thank you to them for giving me the game and, of course, allowing me to voice. If you guys are game developers, I am always happy to do work on games. This was very awesome. I have a lot of games I want to show off. I know Tulio has been bugging me, so keep an eye. If you are a supporter, live streams are happening actually today on Kick, which link will be in the description, so everyone can join in today's stream. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys are awesome as always. Thank you for the continued support. We're getting closer and closer to 100,000 subscribers. Yay! Bye, guys. Love you all.